Ivy Simmons stepped carefully onto the polished marble floor of the gallery, her worn shoes making a soft scrape against the pristine surface. She paused, taking in the sleek modern space. The walls gleamed white, punctuated by bold splashes of color in the abstract paintings, while crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow overhead. The scent of fresh paint mingled with subtle notes of expensive perfume drifting from the well-dressed patrons filling the room. Every detail around her spoke of exclusivity and refinement. Ivy's thrift store dress hung simply and unadorned, the fabric faded but neat. Her battered leather purse was a contrast to the gleaming designer handbags clutching the arms of other guests. She moved cautiously, head held low but composed, the nervous flutter in her chest tucked beneath a calm exterior. Slender figures in sharp suits and flowing gowns glanced her way, eyes narrowing briefly before turning away with barely concealed disdain. A whispered snicker slipped from a group nearby. "Who let her in?" one woman murmured, voice sharp with scorn. "Staff must be slacking," another replied, smirking. At the reception desk, the gallery manager's gaze locked on Ivy's scuffed shoes. Her lips pressed into a thin line as she leaned forward slightly, purse held with rigid posture, judging the newcomer silently but unmistakably. Ivy caught the tight circle of her eyes scanning her dress and the way she carried herself, the unspoken verdict clear. Two young women, dressed immaculately with sparkling jewelry, strolled past Ivy openly mocking her. "Lost, or just brave?" one hissed. Laughter rippled lightly around them, drawing eyes that flicked quickly toward Ivy before returning to polite conversation. Despite the cold stares and hushed cruelty, Ivy inhaled deeply and stepped further into the gallery's shimmering light. The gallery manager straightened her posture as she approached Ivy Simmons. Her heels clicked sharply on the polished floor, drawing the attention of a small cluster of guests nearby. Ivy's heart beat a little faster, her fingers tightening around the strap of her worn leather bag. The manager stopped directly in front of her, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Can I assist you, ma'am?" "This event is by invitation only," she said crisply, her tone implying both suspicion and condescension. Ivy kept her voice steady. "I'm here to enjoy the exhibition," she replied politely. "Someone told me there were a few friend passes available." The manager's smile flattened. "I'm afraid you must be mistaken." Her gaze dropped, minutely but unmistakably, to Ivy's shoes, scuffed, faded, and undeniably out of place amidst the glossy arrivals. "This is a high-profile event reserved for collectors and critics. Your attire is hardly appropriate." Around them, a few guests had overheard the exchange. One woman with a sharp bob and a pearl necklace glanced over and smirked loudly. "Maybe she's one of the caterers," she quipped, loud enough for others to hear. Several phones appeared, pointed subtly towards Ivy. She felt the sting of the eyes on her, the camera lenses capturing her discomfort. Her cheeks warmed with sudden heat, and for a moment her mouth dry, her carefully prepared calm threatened to crack. Trying to hold firm, Ivy responded, "I assure you, I came here with genuine interest. I respect the artist's work." Her voice, though quiet, carried a note of quiet dignity. But the manager's cool dismissal was swift. "It's not about respect. It's about standards. This isn't a charity gala, MS." She paused, waiting for Ivy to volunteer a surname. "Simmons," Ivy answered simply. The manager shook her head. "Ms. Simmons, I must ask you to leave. I will have someone escort you out, if necessary." A staff member appeared promptly beside the manager, young and neatly pressed in a black suit. He glanced apologetically at Ivy before extending his arm toward the exit. Ivy looked around the gallery, eyes pleading silently for some hint of support. But all she saw were the cold smiles, the whispered comments, the amused glances from well-dressed attendees snapping photos or passing judgment without a second thought. "Please," Ivy whispered, voice faltering. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." One of the mockers nearby laughed. "Cause trouble? Honey, you're just a joke." The staff member gently but firmly took Ivy's arm. She resisted for a moment, then, recognizing the utter futility, allowed herself to be led through the crowd. Whispers followed in her wake like a chilly draft. From the gallery tables, people watched with a mixture of curiosity and delight. Phones still pointed in her direction, capturing the humiliating exit. Others shook their heads with thinly disguised amusement, exchanging glances that said clearly, "You don't belong here." As Ivy was pushed toward the gallery's exit, the weight of invisible eyes grew heavier, sinking into her skin, making her shoulders slump. No one offered a hand or a kind word. The air was thick with silent complicity. Outside, the cool evening air brushed against Ivy's flushed face as she stepped onto the sidewalk. She glanced once more toward the gleaming gallery doors where laughter and music spilled onto the street. Inside, the world continued, untouched by what had just happened. Her breath came in shallow bursts. She pressed her palm to the cool glass for a fraction of a second before stepping back into the shadows of the quiet street. Her heart pounded. The sting of embarrassment was sharp. Her confidence, once firm, felt fractured and fragile. Yet beneath the hurt, a quiet resolve whispered in her veins. This was not the end. Back inside the hushed confines of the manager's office, the gallery manager, Claire Mallory, let out a slow breath, smoothing the front of her tailored jacket. Her sharp gaze flicked to the small monitor on her desk that showed the main gallery floor. Ivy Simmons's brief presence on the camera was marked by discomfort and obvious vulnerability, a disturbance that, in Claire's eyes, threatened the very fabric she and her team desperately maintained. "We protect the gallery," Claire muttered, more to herself than to the assistant who had brought her the news. "This place thrives on its exclusivity, its image. If we let anyone slip through, especially those who don't fit the profile, the whole reputation shatters." Her eyes narrowed. Imposters. Uninvited guests tarnishing the experience for the true patrons. It's not just about decorum, it's survival. The assistant nodded silently, unsure whether to argue or agree. Back in the main hall, the atmosphere had resumed its polished veneer. Conversations blossomed again around the artworks, laughter rose with ease, and the soft clinking of glasses echoed under the iconic chandeliers. A few guests had pulled out their phones to watch the gallery's live stream, now seeing only elegant displays and smiling faces. To most, the incident was already fading into the background, a minor blip quickly forgotten. Claire sank back into her leather chair, a faint, self-congratulatory smile tugging at her lips. She believed she had handled it, had preserved what mattered most. Meanwhile, Ivy stood just outside, the hum of city life washing over her like a gentle balm against the sting from moments before. Alone on the empty sidewalk beneath a flickering street lamp, she steadied herself with steady breaths. Her cheeks were damp, but her gaze held a defiant spark. She squared her shoulders, tugged the strap of her aged shoulder bag, and forced a calm mask back into place. A soft rustle startled her. A gentle knock on the gallery's glass door caught her attention. Seconds later, an impeccably dressed young woman rushed hurriedly outside. Clutching an elegant cream envelope embossed with the gallery's seal, she looked around anxiously before spotting Ivy. "Ms. Simmons," she called, stepping forward with urgency and respect. "Yes," Ivy replied cautiously, her curiosity piqued. "I'm from the event organization. There's been a mix-up, but you've been identified as the keynote artist for tonight's exhibition," the young woman said, holding the envelope out with an apologetic smile. "We didn't expect you to arrive so early or dress so differently. Please follow me." Behind them, a sleek black limousine pulled up alongside the gallery's entrance. A driver and an assistant emerged with crystal-clear efficiency. The assistant held a polished name card that read, Ivy Simmons, keynote artist, an affirmation that sent ripples through the crowd still lingering near the entrance. Inside, murmurs began to spread like wildfire. Guests instinctively turned their heads, some whispered excitedly, others exchanged surprised glances. The earlier pervasive smugness dissolved into a keen, electric curiosity. The gallery's atmosphere, once delicate and exclusionary, shifted into something charged with intrigue. From her vantage point just beyond the grand entrance, Claire's keen eyes darted toward Ivy and the event coordinator. The manager's carefully constructed world teetered on the brink of upheaval. Inside the gallery, guests began murmuring in rapid succession, words tumbling out as snippets of the unfolding revelation circulated. The artist is here? I thought Ivy Simmons was just a name. She looks nothing like I imagined. Phones emerged again, this time with praise and astonished commendations rather than ridicule. A few guests, their laughter from moments earlier now awkwardly forgotten, shifted uncomfortably as the truth dawned. Ivy, escorted back inside, moved with quiet dignity. The hum of whispered conversations followed like a tide, ebbing and flowing around her. She held her head high despite the swell of emotions swirling within, hurt, vindication, and something quietly triumphant. As she stepped into the warm gallery light, Ivy felt eyes pierce through illusions and facades, seeing past worn shoes and thrifted dresses to the heart of talent and authenticity. The complexity of the moment, the sting of earlier rejection now met with reverence, settled upon the gathered crowd. Suddenly, from behind a side staircase, the genuine artist appeared. Graceful, radiant, and smiling widely, she paused and gasped, "She's here." All eyes shifted, the crowd parting involuntarily as the figure approached Ivy. Recognition sparked in the air, the truth finally clear. The artist and Ivy Simmons were one and the same. The simple dress was not a sign of status but a deliberate statement, her rejection of pretense. Gasps echoed through the room like soft thunder. The gallery manager's lips parted in disbelief, the flush rising in her cheeks betraying her shock and humiliation. Phones dropped momentarily as guests leaned in, whispers swelling with stunned excitement. Those who had mocked Ivy only moments ago now scrambled to avoid her gaze. Some murmured hurried apologies, streaked with embarrassment and regret. Ivy, unruffled by the shift in mood, offered a calm smile. She addressed the crowd with quiet strength, her voice steady. I chose this attire deliberately, as a reminder that artistry should transcend superficial expectations. I recently returned from an international residency and wanted my appearance to reflect authenticity rather than fashion. Her words rippled through the crowd, disarming snobbery and igniting new admiration. The stark contrast between Ivy's humility and the gallery's earlier snobbery was undeniable. She embodied grace, talent, and genuine power, quietly rewriting the gallery's narrative in that golden moment. The room grew heavier with an unspoken reverence. Ivy had come, not to provoke, but to reveal a truth few had considered: real value could not, and would not, be masked by appearances. The gallery's polished walls suddenly felt more open, the air richer with possibility. Claire Mallory, standing slightly apart, blinked several times before regaining composure. Her tightly held control over the event was slipping in real time. The collision of Ivy's presence with the gallery's rigid standards promised consequences Claire could no longer ignore. And in that charged silence, the gallery awaited what would come next. The gallery hall seemed to hold its breath as Ivy Simmons and the artist converged near the center of the room. The crowd parted with a ripple of surprise, eyes widened, and whispers swelled into murmurs. Claire Mallory, the gallery manager, clutched her clipboard tightly, her usually composed face tightening into a stiff mask of disbelief. The artist, radiant in a sleek, minimalist black dress that complemented her sharp features, took Ivy's hands in hers, her smile warm and genuine. "Everyone, I want you to meet Ivy Simmons," she announced, voice clear and carrying. "She is the creative force behind tonight's captivating exhibition. Ivy has chosen a different way to present herself this evening, but this is the woman whose vision brings all this to life." Gasps echoed through the gallery. Ivy's name buzzed through the crowd like electricity, carried on waves of astonishment and admiration. The reality settled over everyone like a spotlight. The woman they had scorned was the very artist they had come to celebrate. Phones clattered softly as guests fumbled to capture the moment, but many lowered their devices quickly, overwhelmed by the unfolding revelation. The room's lively chatter slowed to a stunned silence. Claire's eyes widened sharply. Her hands trembled slightly, and she swallowed against an unexpected lump in her throat. The very image of Ivy, so modest, so far removed from the glittering expectations of the art world, appended the neat narrative Claire had worked so hard to maintain. The manager's mind raced, recalling the whispers she had allowed, the looks of disdain, the haughty dismissal. It was all unraveling in real time, and she was powerless to stop it. A few guests, those who had earlier delivered cutting remarks about Ivy's appearance, shifted awkwardly. Their faces flushed, and they exchanged hurried glances, desperately searching for excuses or hoping to fade into the background. One socialite whispered, "I had no idea." "I'm so sorry," barely audible. Ivy, standing tall with quiet grace, addressed the assembly. Her voice was soft but carried undeniable strength. "I didn't choose these clothes as a statement of poverty or indifference. I wear this simplicity to remind myself and others that creativity and passion are not measured by appearance." She paused, eyes sweeping the room. "My journey has been one of dedication, from late nights in a small studio to showcasing my work abroad. I arrived at this gallery after a long flight, weary but proud of my story and my art. Tonight, I wanted my presence here to be about the work, not the gloss." Murmurs of approval and admiration rose like a swell through the crowd. Ivy's humility and authenticity contrasted painfully with the earlier coldness and snobbery, creating an emotional undercurrent that few could ignore. The artist beside Ivy smiled brightly and added, "Her art challenges perceptions. The elegance and depth you see in these canvases come from someone who embodies resilience and quiet power." Guests now regarded Ivy not as an outsider but as the shining heart of the evening. Apologies began trickling from corners that had once scorned her. Some approached cautiously, offering condolences for the earlier treatment, others simply averted their eyes. The atmosphere had shifted irrevocably. Ivy's calm presence was not a defeat but a profound victory over shallow prejudices. She was the embodiment of true artistic integrity, humble, unassuming, and nonetheless commanding a room filled with glittering elites. Claire Mallory, absorbing the tumult around her, forced a strained smile and took a step back. Her earlier authority was diminished, and for once, she understood how fragile it was to build status on exclusion. Ivy's arrival had challenged the status quo in a way that could not be ignored or undone. Ivy glanced briefly at Claire, eyes steady but soft. No gloating, no triumphalism, only the poised strength of someone who had weathered dismissal and come through untouched at her core. The room, the gallery, and everyone within it seemed transformed. Items that were once mere displays now felt sacred. The brilliance behind the art reflected in Ivy's quiet dignity infused the space with meaning beyond aesthetic beauty. As conversations restarted, this time with respect and open curiosity, Ivy turned to the artist with a gentle nod. The two women shared a brief, knowing smile, the acknowledgement of a journey marked by grit, passion, and finally, recognition. The guests' eyes lingered on Ivy the rest of the evening, their earlier judgments rendered obsolete. Her presence had rewritten the unspoken rules of the gallery, turning the spotlight not on appearance but on substance. It was more than a social victory, it was a redefining moment, one that cracked open the glittering facade of elitism and invited something richer and real into its heart. From the shadows, Claire watched, realizing the gallery's future had changed in ways she could neither wish away nor resist. Ivy Simmons was not only here but rising, and every observer sensed it, a powerful grace that would echo far beyond this remarkable night. The gallery director, a stern man named Richard Hale, stepped onto the polished floor with an air of authority that instantly hushed the room. He fixed Claire Mallory with a sharp, unwavering stare, cutting through the tension like a blade. "This event will be paused momentarily," Hale announced in a voice both firm and resolute. Effective immediately, Claire Mallory is relieved of her duties as gallery manager pending a formal review of her conduct. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some surprised, others nodding in relief. The decision was swift and unambiguous, signaling a stark shift in the gallery's priorities. Hale's gaze then swept the room, settling briefly on Ivy Simmons. "Ivy, we welcome you as not only the honored guest but as a leading force behind this collection," he said, inclining his head respectfully. "Your presence here has reminded us all of the essential spirit of this gallery." Claire's lips pressed into a tight line, her face was pale, her usual poise replaced by unease. She turned without a word and disappeared swiftly toward the back office, each step echoing her fall from grace. In the moments that followed, the mood among guests transformed dramatically. Conversations turned to criticism of Claire's narrow-mindedness and the toxic exclusivity she had championed. Social media feeds buzzed live updates rapidly condemning her behavior, the hashtag #IvySimmonsRedemption trending by the hour. Whispers filled the hall with speculation about Claire's future at the gallery. Within days, it was confirmed she would be demoted to an administrative role far removed from public interaction, a professional exile wrapped in quiet disgrace. Yet, it was more than just a professional shift. Claire's encounter with Ivy left an indelible mark on her spirit. When they crossed paths weeks later at a gallery event, Claire's eyes avoided Ivy's steady calm. There was a hint of shame, an unspoken apology in the lowered gaze, a silent admission of defeat. Ivy, poised and graceful, offered no harsh words. Instead, she gave a small, enigmatic smile that spoke of forgiveness and the power of moving forward. Their brief exchange was charged with unspoken understanding, a subtle acknowledgement of the journey each had traveled. Outside, Ivy walked away from the gallery, the evening air cool but refreshing against her skin. Her footprints in the marble entryway would remain long after she was gone, a lasting impression on a place forever changed by her quiet strength. Behind her, the crowd lingered in stunned silence, caught between admiration and reflection. Ivy's presence had shifted the narrative entirely, dismantling shallow judgments and replacing them with a fuller, deeper appreciation of talent and authenticity. As she disappeared into the night, the gallery was alive with new energy, a space now open to true creativity beyond appearances, forever altered by the woman who dared to enter simply as she was, and leave as the undeniable heart of the evening.